Hello, my name is Malik Kabasda. Welcome to PM Express. He's a strong man in a small country, now which now occupies the enviable, or rather the unenviable position as the only country with two presidents. I'm talking about Yahya Jammeh, and the country on which he has had a stranglehold for more than 20 years as president, the Gambia. Friends who welcomed Yahya Jammeh with open hands now have sent gun-toting men to his doorsteps with one agenda: get Jammeh out and Barrow in. Where are the chips going to fall? Can ECOWAS achieve its objective without bloodshed? Is this even lawful? Join me. I will introduce to you a crack team of experts who will break down all the issues and answer all the questions. Stay tuned. Come back, you're watching PM Express, and today we are in the Gambia, a country which has dominated discussions across the world. Where are the chips going to fall? I have two guests. Of course, one will join us on the phone. Let me introduce my guest. At the far end is Nana Kwame Ajman. He's an international law lecturer, an international public law lecturer at Lancaster University. Nana, welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, Levina Adai Mensah, who escaped my shoe the last time. Levina, welcome.
Thank you.
And she is with the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP. Let me start with you, Levina. Can this pass off without bloodshed?
There are still some possibilities. There are still a few windows open to pacific resolution of the issues at hand. But it's increasingly becoming slim, given that Yahya Jammeh has still maintained his stance not to go. But we haven't heard from him, since the inauguration happened, so we are not sure what's happening.
Is he hiding in some hole? Would you know?
With Yahya Jammeh, anything is possible, frankly. He's been known to do all sorts of things, so it's quite difficult to predict, and I think that's what he loves about himself, and the fact that it's a sort of enigma to all of us. So we're not sure what's happening. Our sources and our team in the Gambia have not cited him, have not heard anything from him or about him, so we don't know what's going on with him at this point. There are rumors that he's probably been sneaked out. Others are insisting he's there. At least the Mauritanian president left him there last night. So we don't know what he wants to do now, given that the inauguration has actually taken place. So with that, if he's really there, and if he should make any pronouncements, that certainly go against the now recognized position of the international community that there's a new president. Obviously, he has to be, force has to be used to get him out. So in that case, then we'll have to go to a situation where there may be some bloodshed.
Nana, how did we get here? How did we come to have two presidents in this small, tiny country?
So the election was conducted. Initially, Mr. Jammeh conceded defeat, only for him to come back and say that no, he's not conceding anymore. Now something happened in between the initial acceptance and the later on, going back to the U-turn, if you like, because elements within Adama Barrow's party has said that he was going to be put on trial. So I think he felt threatened a little bit. And then he made that U-turn. That is the only reason that could explain some of his actions. So he came back and he said, no, he's not going. And so here we are now with two presidents. The one that is recognized by the international community is not even in the country where he's supposed to rule.
He's holed up in Senegal.
Yes, that is where he is now. So that is the U-turn, sort of fear, harboring of fear within him that has made him done that U-turn. But
there were those who were surprised by the quick manner in which he accepted the results And in fact, we have a colleague who is half Gambian. I'm sure she will not be happy with me mentioning her name here. Jahunyan. She told me that this is the day he did the U-turn, she said, this is the real Jammeh. Were you surprised that he accepted the results in the manner that he did, Kwame?
No, I wasn't surprised because in previous elections, this is not the first time there have been democratic elections in Gambia. Previous elections, which of course went his way, it's been okay to some extent, but it is sort of the procedure for presidents, incumbent presidents who've lost, in our case in Gambia, to concede defeat at some point. So I wasn't surprised. But also, I was not surprised when he made the U-turn, given his history and the fact that he's been sacking judges. You know, he takes some decisions here and there without any sort of deep reasoning, if you like. So he can be a bit like that. So in both sides, I wasn't surprised at all.
Lieutenant, is the man inherently irrational?
Well, there is a perception that he is, because he hasn't been, he's behaved in ways that are not in line with the normal expectations, given his past of, how he has or had remedies to HIV/AIDS, and even the manner in which he declared his country an Islamic state. He's been known not to go with the conventional necessarily, and therefore there's that perception of him being irrational. But contrary to what his position about his first announcement and acceptance, I think some of us were vindicated because we viewed it with a lot of suspicion.
Okay, you didn't believe that it was happening?
Yes.
It was too good to be true.
It was too good to be true, and the conspiracy theorists quickly just said, no, he doesn't mean it. And so when the U-turn happened, it was like, well, we said he didn't mean it, and he was just trying to look for a plan, buy time for a plan, to try and continue to stay in power. So yes, others also were surprised in the sense that they've had two surprises. The one was that they were expecting this then,
and it didn't happen then.
What happened then now? Hoping that he would not accept, and then the international community and everybody would have to try and persuade him, and then he will say, I accept. But Jammeh being who he is, he surprised everybody, and then he said, I accept, and then he said, I don't accept. So.
But Kwame has a point when he says the manner in which the spokespersons for the president-elect then, the kinds of comments they made may have triggered his U-turn.
I think I totally agree. I think in the euphoria, I think a lot of the political immaturity came out, and also the fact that I think they also were kind of like in disbelief that they'd actually won, and not had they only just won, but that he had actually accepted to set aside.
Shouldn't they have shut up then?
Well, that's where the political immaturity comes in. So I think a bit of that was exposed, and that certainly did not contribute positively to helping him to go away peacefully. So it then kind of provided the space and opportunity for him to begin to question and see what opportunities lie in for him to continue to perpetuate his stay in fear.
Yahya Jammeh has been in power for more than 20 years, and we know that this, in African terms, this is not new. Could the international community have done anything different to have forestalled this from happening?
I think the international community did what they had to do within the space that they were given to operate. Let's not forget, before the elections, he had denied access to a lot of people coming in, and he had created an environment where observers did not even want to go in. There was a lot of fear, and so in the case of even election monitoring and observation from civil society, WANEP was one of the few, if not the only one, that actually, set up a situation room and tried to monitor it very carefully. So I think there was a lot of that. So there wasn't even that space or conducive atmosphere for people to go in. Nevertheless, I think the international community had raised enough awareness, which then made it difficult for him not to accept. And even before he accepted, there was a lot of pressure on him to accept. So I think the international community did what was within their capacity and space.
Nana, before he made the U-turn, he cited infractions with the electoral results. And even the Electoral Commission itself, the Independent Electoral Commission of the Gambia itself, actually conceded that there were some problems with the results. So one would say Yahya Jammeh had a case.
Irregularities in the conduct of an election does not nullify the overall results. In the African region, there are likely to be these irregularities. So the commission does accept it, but it wasn't to that extent that it could affect the overall results that made him lose the election.
But he raised sufficient doubts about the integrity of the election, the credibility of the results.
Irregularities, yes, do, but when the gap is such that it is not so close, then of course it shouldn't affect the entire credibility, bearing in mind that wherever you go, even in advanced countries, you tend to get irregularities sometimes. So given our region and the stage of the development in Gambia, these are likely to occur. And it wouldn't be the first time irregularities have occurred in Gambia in previous elections. Certain comments have been made along those lines. But when the results are not enough to make the position of the newly elected person threatened or sort of to challenge in terms of vote count, then it should go on.
Wow. Lavina, so the man says there are concerns with this election. I don't believe in the results. He goes to court. Why don't we wait for him to go through the legal process and then deal with it?
Well, I don't know, the details of the constitution of the Gambia, but people also have said that Yahya Jammeh has tampered with the constitution so much so that there are so many contradictions
in the constitution itself.
This afternoon we tried to print it and found out that it was 145 pages for such a small country. And you realize that there are a number of contradictions within the constitution itself. But one of the things, we've been raising issues about, or some analysts have been raising issues about is, well, he raised concerns and he's filed a petition. In the case of Ghana, for instance, a petition was filed, but it did not stop the process from going forward. Okay. So the idea is that, yes, you filed a petition. There hasn't been a hearing yet. Yet, a new president, according to the constitution, should be sworn in. So why don't we go on with the process and then await the hearing of the court and the verdict, and then if it has to be overturned or new elections conducted, we do so. So this is where I don't know whether there is some legal lacuna or whether indeed it was contrary to the constitution. But from our reading of the constitution, we haven't found anything that still stopped the inauguration from going on.
Nana, what Lafina just said sounds beautiful, but that is in normal times. That's in a country like Ghana. We know that in the Gambia, they actually empanel judges from other countries. So what she's saying may not apply because there are no judges to sit on his case, and he has had to appeal to get judges.
I mean, to even make the waters muddy and murkier, not only is he questioning the results, he's also brought an injunction against the judges of Gambia not to swear in any person until these are resolved. In other words,
which is legal anyway.
Well, yes, it is legal.
Seeking interlocutory injunction is legal.
Yes, it is legal. But what that means is that the judges themselves are implicated in the same suit. Unlike our case from 2012, Nana Akufo-Addo's case petition, that was different because the judges of the superior courts were not sort of implicated. So all these judges in Gambia are implicated. They're part of the suit, so they cannot sit on. And like you rightly pointed out, Gambia is historically known to get judges from outside their country. I mean, Mabel Ajiman, if you can recollect, her from Ghana being the Chief Justice of Gambia. They've had historically several Chief Justices from different places. So the current Chief Justice is saying that I am implicated in this same matter. I cannot sit on. So I have to reconstitute a panel from outside, and they've chosen judges, well-qualified judges and experienced judges from Nigeria. They haven't even gone to Gambia, let alone sit on the case.
Would they go? Should they go?
I wouldn't advise a judge to go at this time, because if you follow the news throughout today, tourists are leaving, people are leaving, nothing is certain at the moment in the country. People who held key positions are leaving the country, so it is a very trickier point now. Now, the person who has been nominated to be the presiding judge from Nigeria, the excuse that he is giving now is that he is fully booked to May. Even there's a likelihood that he will be
So he doesn't have
in
the
Gambia
time.
in November, so there is no time. But we all know that he's also buying time for his own personal safety. So this is what makes the whole thing very, very tricky. So the judges are implicated. They cannot be, the current judges there in Gambia implicate the part of the case. They cannot sit, they cannot be judges in their own case.
Petition.
No. So they have to recruit a new panel, and most of them are not showing up. No one is traveling into the country.
Another talks about the droves of people leaving the Gambia, tourists, ordinary citizens flying out. What's one up picking up as far as security in the country is concerned?
I think the concerns have been, one of the concerns was, of course, that if there was a state of vacuum that was created, then, of course, it opens up the space for all kinds of elements, to come in. And let's not forget also that we've got Casamance just around the corner, and that is, one of the oldest conflicts in West Africa, and it still hasn't been resolved. And, of course, the Gambia was implicated in that conflict because of the closeness and the cultural ties that they have with the Casamance region. And so that was one area of concern. Now that there is a president that has been officially, inaugurated and recognized by the international community, the hope is that there will quickly be some kind of intervention or some kind of a process of restoring or establishing clear law and order. And close up the space for any elements to come in. We also had, in terms of the concerns, the fact that before, the whole of last week and even this week, there were a number of, rounding up of military leaders, and, these are people that are loyalists, and the army is very divided. Even along ethnic lines. So those concerns have not gone away necessarily. And that's why a speedy, intervention of sorts, either by pacific means or by the use of force, is important to not to allow all these sentiments to fester and begin to lead into all sorts of things that we are not looking for.
Yao tells us that Gambians are naturally laid back people, docile if you want. Would you say that played a part in where we are today, that we haven't had any bloodshed so far? If this had happened in some other African country, we saw Kenya, we saw Ivory Coast, we saw even Burkina Faso. Did the nature of the people play a part in bringing us to where we are? That at this point, things are calm.
Well, it may have played a part, but let's not also forget the kind of leadership we've had in the Gambia, where it was very difficult to find the space to engage in any sort of, demonstration or
no room for
contestations. So that in itself, I think, did not allow for people to protest too much. Where they've happened, what the situation has been with a lot of journalists that have disappeared, that have been arrested, activists that have been disappeared, civil society groups, including even some people from WANEP who were wanted.
Oh, really?
And so, the space was not there. And that is probably, but that is negative. That is not necessarily positive. So now how do we begin to look at all those factors as we get into a next phase, where hopefully there will be some kind of a settlement And then we begin to look at what processes we need to put in place to reconstruct where there are dysfunctions.
Nana, we know that ECOWAS is contemplating intervention. Is that legal?
The questions of legality in relation to interventions in such scenarios, the main thing that you have to look at is that interventions and the use of force within interventions is the last resort, not the first. Okay, so although they've readied themselves, that there is the presence of the army, it is just there at the moment. Now, to obtain legality or sort of use legitimate force, you have to go to the UN. And the ECOWAS did that exactly, and the UN Council sat today, and they have agreed that they support Adama Barrow, and that there could be an intervention. But it was very quick to add that force should be the last resort, and that all other means should be exhausted first before any force could be used. So intervention within international relations and international law, in such cases, you have to, if you want a legal backing for your action, you have to go to the UN.
Is the UN not being hypocritical here? Because we remember when the UN wanted to go to Libya, all it did was just call a meeting, the UN Security Council passed a resolution 1973, and then just said, okay, they should go and protect civilians and all other actions as are necessary for the protection of civilian lives. It was under the cloak of that pretext that the intervention was done, but it's because the superpowers were leading it. Why are they now talking about, in the case of the Gambia, why are they saying we must use all other measures? Have all those measures not failed already?
I don't think so. There are chances for Mr. Jammeh to either leave the country peacefully. There hasn't been any fight yet. Perhaps that is traceable, explainable by the nature of the Gambian people. There hasn't been any bloodshed. So there is this kind of subtle disagreements even within the army, but there hasn't been any fight yet. So the UN has to make sure that force becomes the last resort and not the first.
Lavina says that the window of opportunity for this to be resolved peacefully is narrowing.
I think it is still open. It's always been there. Apart from these comments that was made by the elements of Adama Barrow's party, there was always a way for him to get out. I could list them. First one is for him Nigeria has offered him political asylum. He could go there.
Can Nigeria be trusted? Because when they took Chastila, we know what happened. Eventually, they hung Chastila dry.
I was going to say that, and that could explain why he's not taking that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the thing about political asylum is that it could be only safe and sound only for some time until you are called by perhaps the International Criminal Court, and then extradition proceedings could begin. But that was one option, avenue for him to go out of the Gambia. The second one was that his wife, I gather, is from Morocco, so the Moroccan government is also key to have him and grant him political asylum in Morocco. But that has not also been taken. He hasn't commented on that. The third one is that Adama Barrow has assured him that he could live in the Gambia still and receive all the remuneration and the respect that a past president can get. You know, he will be paid salaries, he will be given protection, but he is not taking all these conciliatory statements from him. He doesn't believe that that could be true.
And he has a basis not to believe, doesn't he, Lavina?
Well, of course, there are experiences, you know, from other places that he can look at and say, you know, for that reason, one could question them. And then, of course, also knowing the extent of the perception of the, you know, the atrocities, perceived or real atrocities that he's committed. Of course, it makes it difficult to believe that, you know, that's going to happen. And then, as he said earlier, given some of the statements that came from some of his, you know, his advisors, you know, talking about dragging him to court, talking about putting him under house arrest, you know, taking away some of the privileges so quickly, those that certainly did not help. So it kind of fits into his position of doubt. So yes, there are grounds for his position now.
So you said those things, and then when you turn back and then say, oh, okay, now we will allow him to live in peace, your credibility is damaged. He can't trust you.
But I think let's also, let's not look at it just within the framework of the elements or the advices around Barrow. As you said, we need to also recognize, some level of political immaturity. But then beyond that, there are protocols that guide ECOWAS and how they deal with situations like that. And there have been mediation processes, and those you cannot necessarily question. When you're dealing with the likes of, Ibn Chambers and the likes of Buhari and our own former president, you don't easily question your basis for questioning, what they are offering in terms of negotiations. It could be faulty.
I have to go to the phone lines and talk to one of our colleagues, Benjamin Tete. He used to be a journalist here. He's now based in Dakar with the West Africa Radio, if I remember the name correctly. Benjamin, if you can hear me, welcome to PM Express.
I can hear you clearly. Thanks so much.
Great. How is Dakar?
Well, Dakar is calm tonight after a hectic and a busy day with the whole world's attention on Dakar. Thankfully, tonight everything has settled now.
Are the Gambians still jubilating and celebrating the swearing in of Adama Barrow?
Yes, a bit into the night now. A couple of people from what our correspondent in Banjul was telling me before I started speaking with you now, a bit of people are now coming down and are going home. So it seems that the celebration is gradually mellowed compared to just immediately after Adama Barrow was sworn in. We saw lots of people jumping onto the streets in Dakar, and it was more of a chaotic one. Thankfully, there wasn't any incidents that were really recorded, except the jubilant people who were out on the streets.
Why is Yaya Jammeh? Do we know?
That's the 1001 question everyone is asking us at now. So far, indications are that he is still in the Gambia. That is what we know so far. There's no clear indication yet where exactly he is. But if we follow development, at least from last night till now, we know the Mauritanian president met with him at the presidency. So far, we've seen video footages and pictures of this meeting. And so he was right at the presidency. Yes, after that, we know the Mauritanian president went straight up to the airport and flew all alone. Thankfully, I was at the airport here in Dakar, where he too came to meet with the Senegalese president. So since then, we follow development from that. We know that the last time Yaya Jammeh was seen in public was at the presidential palace in Gambia. And since then, there has been no word of him. The correspondent tells us the presidential jets or the presidential planes of the Gambia are still well packed. One of them the previous night was fueled and put on the tarmac, but apparently it never took off. So the jets are also intact. Unless he managed somehow to sneak out of the country, we wouldn't really know where he is now.
You spoke about the last time he was seen. When was this?
This was just last night. Last night before midnight, sometime around 10 p.m., the president of Mauritania flew to Banjul, and he made this last-minute attempt to mediate in effort there, hopefully, to persuade Yaya Jammeh either to step aside and go ahead and make a public declaration to that effect. And then secondly, he even offered, from what we have heard so far from Mauritania, he even offered to give Yaya Jammeh asylum. So the probability was that he could have even traveled together with him last night before midnight out of the country.
Where are the ECOWAS troops?
Well, just a while ago, one of my correspondents, Sharif Bojan Jr., is with them at Karang. There's this border point between the Gambia and Senegal called Karan, where as we speak there are lots of people who have moved out of there and are at the border. So they have now moved from the border right into the heart of the Gambia. So as we speak, they are pushing forward towards Banjul. I'm told that this road is just about 45 minutes drive. So it's not really far from the capital, the capital, Banjul. But from what the military is saying, just earlier this evening, I was speaking with the Senegalese army spokesperson, Colonel Abdul Ndiaye, and his word is that they cannot tell exactly when they are going to get to the Banjul because they don't know what hindrances or what obstacles they might meet on their way. So as we speak, the ECOWAS standby force has moved right into the heart of the Gambia.
Earlier, we heard that the head of the military in the Gambia said that they will not oppose any intervention by any foreign force. Is that confirmed?
Apparently, it was more of, if he said that, then he said it to possibly President Adama Barrow's team. Openly, he never did. What he rather did that was clear to people was that he went out and joined people who were celebrating the victory of Adama Barrow just today, this afternoon. So he was out on the street with them, he watched them, and the only message he gave them was that no one should cause any worry or no one should cause any distraction or celebrate out of bounds, and that they should maintain law and order. This was what all he said. But yes, indeed, just after the inauguration of Adama Barrow, I spoke with one of the top officials of Adama Barrow, and his statement to me was that the head of the Army Defense Staff had given his assurance that he had thrown his weight behind the president, Adama Barrow. He even went ahead and said, from the quoting this official of Adama Barrow I interviewed tonight, and he went on and said that the army said they will not stand in the way of any foreign intervention, obviously referring to the standby force. So if these words are anything to go by, it appears that the army are going to stand aloof and watch the ECOWAS force take over the presidency in Banjul.
Ben, my last question to you. You said yesterday one of the presidential fleets was fuel, but it didn't fly. Is it possible that he can sneak out by road? And if it is, where would he go? Well,
of course, we can only speculate at this moment. Yaya Jammeh is from an ethnic group called the Jola. Here in Senegal and across the border to the Gambia, we have the Jolas in Senegal, we have the Jolas in the Gambia. In fact, those who know the history a bit of Senegal, there is the region they call the Casamance region. This was a region where there was quite a bit of a turbulence and a military rebellion, actually, where the people of the area were trying to break away from the Senegal. Interestingly, these are the Jola people. They supported Yaya Jammeh in coming into power. And apparently, after Yaya Jammeh came into power, the Senegalese citizens and the people of Senegal believe that Yaya Jammeh in turn supported them to cause this rebellion, in an effect trying to break away from Senegal. So, well, he has loyalty there. So if there's anything, people are thinking that that may be one route through which he might escape. And interestingly, from that side, you can easily sneak into Guinea. Already we've heard that the Guinean president, Alpha Condé, was offering Yaya Jammeh asylum. That we haven't had any official statement to that effect. Secondly, we have also heard that Mauritanian president who came there offered him asylum. As to whether he's going to do that by road and probably take it through to Mauritania, we do not know. The wife of Yaya Jammeh is also from Morocco. So this is one country as well that people were looking up to, that possibly Yaya Jammeh might go to seek asylum. So it seems that there are options still open for him if he really decides to live peacefully. As at midnight that he didn't do that, we really don't know whether any of these countries will still open that arm to him freely, considering the way how turbulent things have come. Also considering that the international community has now accepted Adama Barrow, and now the UN Security Council has virtually made a declaration in support of Barrow, and also asking for a way to get rid of Yahya Jammeh and to put Barrow in. So there are options, but as to whether he would accept them and whether these other countries will accept them is something that I'm sure as the days come by, we will get to know.
Ben, thank you for the enlightenment that you have brought us. Lavina, you were talking about the Casamance region and the problems thereof. Ben just introduced a new element about the ethnic groups and the fact that you have ethnic groups that straddle these two countries, and he could sneak. Do we see him doing that?
Well, it's not a far-fetched thought. I mean, indeed, as he said, the Casamance region is made up of the Jolas, and Yahya Jammeh is a Jola and comes from the border towns, close to the border towns with Senegal. So, of course, he's got ties to that region, and he could. But there's also the possibility that he wouldn't, because, as I said, there are still issues in the Casamance that have not been fully resolved. You still have factions that have been fighting, MFDS and other groups that have been fighting for years. Actually, the issue about seeking secession started actually before the reign of Jammeh. It actually started under when we had President Dawda Jawara in power. That was when the Casamance conflict started. This was in '82. And so I'm not sure if he wants to go there because he could very quickly be smoked out. But possibly Mauritania, as he said, seems to be quite lucrative. The only challenge is that how he gets there. If he has to go by road, then he has to drive through Senegal, to get to Mauritania.
And you think they will capture him? They will not allow him to go?
Well, the question is, why should he be captured?
Because people want him to go anyway.
Yes, well, and so if he's leaving, then why don't you give him free passage and accord him some of the privileges of an ex-president? So we don't know. The thing is, we never know with Jammeh. But from sources, his preference, of course, is to stay in the Gambia and just settle on his farm. But that is where the biggest fears are actually, because
maybe
there
find
are
us another cure for AIDS.
The allegations are that he stocked up all sorts of ammunitions in his farm, and he cannot be trusted if he's on his farm.
Nana, today Adama Barrow was sworn in. Would it be the first time a president is being sworn in another country?
I haven't read anywhere that,
It's a very curious arrangement.
It is. But thankfully, the constitution of Gambia, I was looking at it today, or most constitutions that I have read does not provide a specific location for a swearing in. And so far as the act is done procedurally, then it is okay. And given the circumstances surrounding this, if he was to come home, it could be chaotic. So it is okay, because there is no provision saying that you couldn't be swearing anywhere else. But it makes it quite. It has become a norm, an international norm, that you get sworn in your home country in a specific place.
Like in the Ghana's case, the swearing should happen before Parliament.
Yeah. Yes, and the justices of the court should be there. In this case, the justices are implicated, so even more the better of swearing him. So who swore him in? It was the president of the Bar Association that sworn him in. But bear in mind that if you look at rules of engagement of diplomacy, an embassy is more or less the country, is more or less the country of origin. So if you do that in an embassy, it should be accepted.
Earlier we heard that Jammeh had closed down the embassy in Senegal.
In fact, there were even rumors that he was going to fire the ambassador. The ambassador wouldn't be able to, because at some point there were talks that even the ambassador could swear him in. But then eventually it was the president of the Bar Association that did it. Yes, but as he said, it's interesting, and it makes it adds interesting dynamics to international, not just international relations, but also the whole issue of swearing in a president and so on. And I think hopefully we would then all learn and use these to kind of enhance our constitutions if we find any of these problematic or weird. But strictly speaking, it's an extension of the territory of the Gambia.
Let's look at what Adama Barrow said when he was sworn into office. One of his first comments was directed at the military. He said the military should stay in their barracks. What's the significance of that?
It is very important. When you were speaking to Benjamin, he made a key point. He said that there is some sort of indifference of the military. They want to send a signal that they are in the middle. And that is understandable at this point because you have two commander-in-chiefs in that case. So the first thing you want to do when you've been brought in as the new commander-in-chief is to sort of give them some assurances, given the division in the army already, and the fact that they are saying that we are indifferent. Even if there is an invasion of a foreign force, we will still be there as indifferent. And that is a sensible position because you do not know who to take orders from. At the time that he was making that statement, you do not know who to take orders from, whether from the ousted president or the one who is appropriating and arrogating power to himself still, or the newly one who is recognized internationally. So the indifferent position, not making a decision to say that we're all out for this or that person is a good choice. But also that is reinforced and the statement by Barrow then sort of entrenches that calmness that the military wants to state.
Lavina, that's a difficult position to be in, isn't it, for the military? That at this material moment, you don't know where your allegiance should be.
Well, I think, yes, it's always a difficult thing, with the way the military works and wanting to be able to have clear orders, clear chains of commands. And, this kind of is a bit unclear where the chains lie, the line of commands lie. And also there's the fact that, again, as I talked about earlier, there are these some divisions also within the military. So I think, they kind of work in a very, very fine and very sensitive line of trying to stay neutral or perceived to be neutral and yet obeying the chains of command without the clarity of where the chains are.
and he said that those, and he's talking about the military, those who are found illegally holding arms will be considered rebels. That's tough talk.
But that's, there are laws, there's rule of law, and it has to work. And if you're not authorized to hold and use guns, of course, then the military, as part of the security forces, have to come in. And all this, we are not even finding this where the police is.
Do they even have a police force? Because
everybody is just looking at the military, but there are also other security forces. And one wonders where, how they are also operating. But certainly that is in line with, the rule of law. So if you're not authorized to have guns, then of course you have to be dealt with
considered rebel. No,
yes.
Ben said the ECOWAS force is moving, and given the time that he gave us, they could be in Banjul anytime. What should they do? What are they going to do? What are they expected to do?
They are expected to be there and be on guard and alert. I am very certain that they wouldn't initiate force first. Now the key question to ask is how to get the president home for him to go into wherever he has to rule from, the presidential palace or wherever he has to be. And that is a very key question, and they have to be there to make sure that happens. And the ECOWAS force would move in the direction of the local army, which is now indifferent. So if the army sort of put on a force and a face that is sort of preventive or preventing the president from coming in, then they have to step in. But I very much doubt that they will initiate force, bearing in mind that the resolution that came in today says that force is the last but not the first resort, that any other means should be used. And everyone is keen to avoid the use of force at this point. So they will just be there hanging around, making sure everything is okay. That is the primary goal until something has happened.
Their mere presence in that country itself not indicative of interventionist decisions or action? How can you say you are not using force when you are there? You are occupying the people's land.
Well, I think here there's a clear case of some concerns with the safety and security of the newly elected and sworn in president. And this is where ECOWAS comes in to try and provide that physical, presence of and assuring, that the space is safe for you to come in, because there's a need for the president to be physically present on the Gambian soil. He needs to start putting in place his cabinet. There's a lot to be done.
So are they in there looking for Jammeh to take him out, or they are there to create an enclave and bring Adama Barrow in to then function as president?
If Jammeh is there and he's in his corner doing his own thing, that's not the objective. It'll be interesting to see what the mandate is, but the objective of the mandate is to ensure that, to ensure the peace and stability of the Gambia. How it is done is dependent on how things will emerge. If they face opposition in trying to ensure that there's peace and stability, of course, then they will have to deal with that opposition. Then that becomes the next level of objective of the mission, to try and deal with that, and if it involves use of force. But there are clear, rules of engagement, and as he said, use of force is not the first, and that is not the primary objective.
Nana, can we reasonably expect that Yahya Jammeh at this point, given all that has gone on, he can just stay in his corner somewhere and ignore everybody, and then business can just continue as usual, and Adama Barrow will come and be his president and function effectively?
He can do that. That option is available to him.
Will he?
Will he? I don't think he would, purely because he is an influential man. And if he stays in the Gambia, he's been ruling for a long time when he was a very young man to date, and he has entrenched himself. And he still, even according to the ballot, he still has people that support him. But I doubt that he would stay in the Gambia. He might take one of the exit route calmly, and go. And if he goes, I think his name will go in the history books. He can undo some of the things that he's been accused of doing if he peacefully go.
Can he? Can he repair any damage?
Can he repair any damage? I think it depends on how he comports himself in response to, the efforts that are still being considered to engage him, to ensure that, he goes away and goes away properly and peacefully. And some of the, options that are still being looked at, for instance, given that he carries himself out as very religious and very spiritual, to, consider some track 3 actors in mediation processes and look at traditional and religious leaders, spiritual leaders, from Senegal and so on, who could come in
just
and
some
engage
big
him.
imam.
Yes, who could come in and engage
And they'll
with him.
bring him a big tasbih.
Well, part of the mission also, the intervention, the objective of the intervention of ECOWAS is also to ensure that, again, all options to ensure that he leaves, the environment is created for that. So their mere presence there then also helps, if you have to have international mediators coming in, to still come in, and where they have to engage him, they can engage him. And where they have to do dialogue, then there's that
In
possibility.
15 seconds, tomorrow, what will we hear in the news?
We don't know.
Nana, what will we hear tomorrow?
I don't think no one knows. We have to be reading the mind of Mr. Jammeh, but he's a very complicated man to start making speculations about him.
On that note, Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Levina Adai-Mensah, Deputy Executive Director, 1F. And of course, Nana Kwame Ajiman. He is a lecturer of International Public Law at Lancaster University. They are my guests. I believe you enjoyed the discussion. They brought enlightenment to the discussion. God willing, we will bring you another exciting discussion on PM Express. Until then, my name is Malik Abbas.